The solemn phantom, draped and hooded, moved like a mist along the ground. It was shrouded in a deep black garment which concealed its head, its face, its form, and left nothing of it visible save one outstretched hand. Its presence filled Scrooge with a solemn dread.
I am in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come?
He asked. The spirit answered not, but pointed downward with its hand.
You are about to show me the shadows of things that will happen in the time before us. Is that so, Spirit?
The spirit slowly inclined its head. That was the only answer Scrooge received. The phantom moved away as it had come. Scrooge followed in the shadow of its dress, which bore him up, he thought, and carried him along. And then they were in the heart of the city, amongst the merchants who hurried up and down and chinked their money in their pockets and looked at their watches and conversed in groups as Scrooge had seen them often. The spirit stopped beside one little knot of businessmen and indicated with its hand. Scrooge advanced to listen to their talk. "No, I don't know much about it either," said a great fat man with a monstrous chin. "I only know he's dead." "When did he die?" inquired another, yawning. "Last night, I believe." "Wonder what he's done with his money?" asked the great fat man. "Oh, I haven't heard," said the second man, yawning again. "He hasn't left it to me, that I do know." "It's likely to be a very cheap funeral," said the fat man. "Though, upon my life, I'm sure no one will go. Suppose we make up a party. We might even get a free lunch." Scrooge was at first surprised that the spirit should attach importance to a conversation so trivial, but feeling that it had some hidden purpose, he resolved to treasure up every word he heard and everything he saw in order to find the solution to this riddle. Quiet and dark, the phantom once more moved away, and as he turned to follow, Scrooge noticed that already the busy scene around them had changed. They were in an obscure part of the town, where Scrooge had never penetrated before, although he recognized its situation and its bad repute. The ways were foul and narrow, the houses and shops wretched, the people half naked, drunken, slipshod, ugly. Alleys and archways, like so many cesspools, disgorged their offences of smell and dirt and life upon the straggling streets, and the whole quarter reeked with crime, with filth and misery. Far in this den of infamous resort, there was a low-browed, beetling shop, below a penthouse roof, where iron, old rags, bottles, bones, and greasy offal were bought. Rusty keys, nails, chains, and all manner of old iron were piled upon the floor, and secrets that few would like to scrutinize were bred and hidden in mountains of unseemly rags, masses of corrupted fat, and sepulchres of bones. Sitting in among the wares he dealt in was a grey-haired rascal, nearly 70 years of age, who'd screened himself from the cold air without by a frowsy curtaining of miscellaneous tatters hung upon a line. He leaned back, smoking his pipe, in all the luxury of calm retirement. At that very moment, the rusty hinges of the door announced a visitor, and a woman with a heavy bundle slunk into the shop. She smiled a cautious, toothless smile, and waited in the gloom. But she had scarcely entered when another woman, similarly laden, came in. A large black bonnet covered up her face. A long black cape was round her shoulders. And as she stood beside the door, only her eyes seemed visible. Restless, inquiring, greedy eyes. But she was closely followed by a third visitor, a tall, thin man in faded black, who seemed startled by the presence of the others, and all of them startled by the recognition of each other. The old man sitting by the fire chuckled Well, well, if you three haven't all met here without meaning it. But then we're all suitable to our calling. We're all matched, I think. Come into the parlour. Come into the parlour. Let the charwoman be the first, the laundress second, and the undertaker's man the third. Come now, Mrs. Dilber. What have you today? Again the toothless smile, as without a word the first woman opened her bundle and laid upon the dirty floor some sheets and towels, 2 silver teaspoons, and a few boots. Having done this, she laughed. It was a hideous sound. Very nice indeed, very nice indeed. Worth a bob or two, I think, and he won't want 'em where he is. And now, dear lady, what have you to lay beside such priceless plunder? But the second lady motioned to the man in black. Open his bundle first. I'll wait till last. The tall, thin man produced a small package from his pocket. It contained a seal or two, a pencil case, a pair of sleeve buttons. He was a miserable, wicked old screw, said the man. This is all I could get from his room. For all his money, he had no fancy things. He lived alone, and he died alone. Alone by himself. Well, how about this, then? Called the second woman, and her greedy eyes looked down upon the contents of her bundle, now laid out for all to see. The curtains came from round his bed, the blanket straight off his mattress, and that shirt was his very own. They'd have wasted it if it hadn't been for me. What do you call wasting it, my dear? Asked the old man. Putting it on him to be buried, that's what I mean, replied the woman. And as they laughed, they gathered close to the old man, who from a filthy flannel bag around his waist brought forth some coins to pay them off. It was a hideous sight, and Scrooge, shuddering from head to foot, addressed the ghost. I see. The case of this unhappy man might be my own, and I must learn from this. But, spirit, let me see some tenderness connected with a death. In answer to this question, the spirit once more pointed, and following the line of the outstretched arm, Scrooge saw that they were no longer in the filthy shop. Instead, they were in a small room, sparsely furnished, but neat and clean, and hung about with Christmas. In one corner of the room was a small bed, in which a young child lay. Beside the bed, a chair. And there sat Bob Cratchit, his face lined, his body bent, his eyes tired and tearful. He sat motionless for a while, looking at the small child. Then, wearily, he rose to his feet and, leaning over, kissed the little face. Downstairs, a silent family waited, looking towards the door. The noisy little Cratchits were as still as statues in one corner. Peter sat at the table, an open book before him. The mother and her daughters, who'd been engaged in sewing, had put aside their work. At last, Bob entered. "Our little Tim has left us now," he said. "The pain and suffering in you, he'll feel no more." And as he spoke these words, the tears ran down his face. He couldn't help it. They sat around the fire, and quietly Bob told them all how in a green and lovely place their tiny Tim would rest, and every Sunday they would go and visit him. Then Mrs. Cratchit kissed him. His daughters kissed him. The two young Cratchits kissed him, and Peter and himself shook hands. Spirit of Tiny Tim, thy childish essence was from God.
Spectre, said Scrooge in a low voice, you showed me tenderness indeed. But tell me now, that other man who died, they talked of him, they sold his clothes. What man was that?
The ghost of Christmas yet to come conveyed him as before through time and place until they reached an iron gate. Beyond it lay an open place, walled in by houses overrun by grass and weeds. The spirit stood among the graves and pointed down to one in a manner that held new meaning to Scrooge.
Before I draw nearer to that stone at which you point, he said, answer me this. Are these the shadows of the things that will be, or are they the shadows of the things that only may be?
Still the silent spirit pointed downwards to the grave by which it stood. Scrooge crept towards it, trembling as he went, and following the finger, read upon the stone of the neglected grave his own name. Ebenezer Scrooge.
I am the man they spoke of. I am the man whose clothes they sold.
Scrooge fell upon his knees and grasped the spirit's hand.
Oh, good spirit, intercede for me, for I will honor Christmas in my heart. I will live in the past, the present, and the future. I will not shut out the lessons I have learned. Oh, tell me it is not too late.
Then Scrooge held up his hands in one last prayer to have his fate reversed. He saw an alteration in the phantom's hood and dress. It shrank, collapsed, and dwindled down into a bedpost.